Well, the president calls Paul Ryan's budget radical and short-sighted while he's on the road selling his alternative to tackling the deficit and debt. Members of Congress are back in their districts. They're doing the same, often with some colorful language themselves. Kentucky Congressman John Yarmuth called the Ryan budget a Harry Potter plan. He's a member of the Budget Committee and joins us from Louisville, Kentucky this morning. Congressman, thanks for joining me.
Good morning, Chuck.
I want to start with one of the criticisms that I think is coming actually now from a bipartisan group of folks, Democrats and Republicans, and see where you are on this. And it has to do with the president's Medicare commission of sorts, which would this beefed up board that would approve rates, reimbursement rates, and it could really set the table for how insurance companies overall reimburse doctors for health care bills. It takes that power away from Congress. Are you comfortable with that?
Well, I'm not really comfortable with that. We had that debate last year, and right now we have an institution called CMS that does virtually the same thing. It's a rather arbitrary way of doing it. It doesn't get, as far as I'm concerned, sufficient input. So before I would agree to the president's proposal, I would want to make sure that this panel got sufficient input from people who are in the trenches in healthcare.
When you say what parts of it you just feel as if there's not enough doctor involvement, nurse involvement, or also with the folks dealing with medical bills themselves? What is it that's missing in the way the president's doing this?
I think a lot of the input comes from, for those things, comes from hospitals. An enormous amount of power is concentrated in hospitals. Physicians are generally squeezed in this whole equation. You don't get enough input from patients as well, and nurses. There just needs to be balanced input because there isn't sufficient input right now.
You know, one of the unique aspects about your tenure in Congress is that before you were there, you were a columnist. You were on the other side. You were, criticizing, watching what was going on, venting your frustrations rather openly. I remember when you ran, a lot of people said, well, he's taken too many positions, so he'll never win. Well, you won. You've been there a while. You're probably going to be there a while if you want to now with the way your district is. What lessons do you say to yourself, boy, you know what? I was naive about X these days. If I had been a member of Congress, I wouldn't have written X.
Well, I'm not sure that I would really go back and rewrite anything I've done. What I've learned, however, is that if you're actually straightforward and honest with voters, whether, don't follow polls, just tell them what you believe, and if you can establish a certain level of trust in your constituency, then they're not as concerned about how you vote on a particular issue. This debt ceiling vote, which I know is considered politically toxic right now, I'm going out and telling my voters, look, if you vote against the debt ceiling, you're voting to foreclose on the United States of America. That's plain and simple. This is really one of the most simple issues we have, is whether or not to raise the debt ceiling. It's not a debatable issue. So most people, when I'm talking to them, they're asking me for information because they understand that these issues are really complicated. And if you're honest with them, I think it pays off. It's
interesting. There was something, a great column you wrote back in 2006, March of 2006, and you wrote this about Social Security and your frustration with the American political system. You said, for example, even though the Social Security system faces a dire financial future, no one has seriously discussed how to fix it. Republicans marched in lockstep behind the Bush proposal, even though no one demonstrated that it would solve the problem, and Democrats universally opposed it without offering a solution. Watching what you watched back in 05 and 06 on Social Security and now participating in this conversation on the debt and deficit, are we seeing the same pattern take hold?
Well, we are, and unfortunately, both sides play to their base a lot of the time. And I think one of the problems we face now in Washington after this last election is both sides have gotten a little bit more ideologically rigid. I think that's unfortunate. I thought that the Simpson-Bowles Commission report was something that was really worthy of debate. I'm glad the president has kind of resurfaced some of those principles in his revised budget plan, and because the idea that we would say we won't extend we won't raise the rate that people get full retirement benefits until to 70 years old, 65 years from now, when it doesn't affect one person who's alive yet. The idea that we would kind of rule that off the table makes no sense to me. So I think we're playing to our bases too much. And again, this is an opportunity right now with the Standard & Poor report, with all this talk about I think the public is really focused for the first time on the serious nature of our economic situation and our fiscal situation. It's time we have an opportunity to have the kind of thoughtful conversation that we need to have. And so I don't think either side should rule anything off the table.
All right. John Yarmuth from Kentucky's 3rd District, Louisville, Kentucky, Democrat from there. Thanks for joining me this morning on Daily Rundown.
Thanks, Chuck.
All right.